I had a friend called Jess. She died a couple of years ago. We have a swing set in our back garden. We used to play on it a lot. When we were younger, my sister, who is 4, will sit on the swings and talk to the empty one. I once asked her who she was talking to, and she looked at me and said, "The one and only Jess." That's what my friend used to call herself when she was in the hospital. She'd sign every letter off with that phrase. I don't know how my sister knew, because the letters are in the attic and she can't read anyway. I felt like I was in a movie. I started crying and my sister said, "She doesn't want you to be sad." I don't talk about Jess, and my sister was a baby when she died, so she shouldn't even remember her. I have no idea how she knows. She also knows her last name, but I'm obviously not going to share that. When I was living in my parents' house, my bedroom had this closet that sat directly opposite my bed. For whatever reason, I can't remember, the door couldn't close. That closet had always given me bad vibes, and I almost never slept. But the worst was one night when I was home alone. I was lying in bed, trying to sleep, when suddenly it got eerily quiet. I was home alone, but I could typically hear nighttime sounds coming from outside. As I lay there, trying to rationalize, I started to hear some whispering. At first, I couldn't make it out, but then I recognized it. It was my name. Obviously freaked out, I was nearly paralyzed with fear. I sat there for what felt like forever when I felt something, a thin finger, slowly tracing down my foot from toes to heel. The rest of that night is honestly a blur. I was about 11 at the time. My bedroom was right next to the bathroom. It's an old house with thin walls. I woke up during the night, nothing unusual. Rolled over to go back to sleep. That's when I heard it. It was a kind of soft, scratching noise. I lay there for a minute, kind of awake, half asleep, so I wasn't sure I'd actually heard anything. Then, I hear it again. Soft, but definitely there. This time, I sat up in bed, sure I heard a sound. A sound that was coming from inside the house. It felt like forever, sitting upright in bed. Frozen, trying not to breathe too loud. By now, I could tell it was coming from the bathroom. I'm not sure what possessed me, but instead of getting the fuck out and going to my mom's room, I got my t-ball bat from under the bed and decided I needed to confront whatever demon was in my bathroom. As I crept toward the open bathroom door, I could hear the scratching. It was louder now, more aggressive. I stood in the doorway and flicked the light switch on. I stood there, staring into the empty bathroom as my eyes adjusted to the light. I couldn't see anything. The room was empty. That's when the closed shower curtain started to move, along with more aggressive scratching. I stood there in disbelief. Was this really happening? Is this how I die? Armed with my bat, I crept forward toward the shower. My heart was thumping so hard. Petrified, I crept closer. The shower curtain started moving again. I held up my bat with one hand, ready to swing. Pulled back the curtain in a swift move to find. A black cat sat in the bathtub, eating my pet cat, Nancy, her lifeless body torn apart. So, I was dating a girl in my early 20s. We went on a road trip to California when she started displaying symptoms of schizophrenia. She would be normal as fuck all day, and then, all of a sudden, just shift in vibe. So, one night, I'm with her, and we're staying alone in this little building on a farm while doing a work trade. She was having a normal conversation with me when, all of a sudden, she froze, staring past me with a terrified look on her face. "It's right behind you." "Yeah, fuck that man." I was so scared. I look behind me, find nothing, and ask her what she saw. She doesn't explain. Then, she starts saying bad things about herself, spiraling more and more negative with her thoughts. Her pupils widen in an instant, like she just got eye drops put in. I notice she goes to grab a knife off the side table. I quickly grab her wrist, the one holding the knife, and wrestle her down to the ground. I eventually got the knife from her before she could do anything with it. The craziest part was how strong this person was. I had probably 60 pounds on this 110-pound chick, and she was putting up a hell of a fight trying to keep the knife. I was a babysitter, and the kids were asleep upstairs. The only lights on in the house were 3 table lamps in the living room where I was doing homework. The phone rang. This is the 80s, so I answer the landline. I hear a dial tone, but the phone keeps ringing after I answer it. I fiddle with the phone, and it eventually stops ringing but still has the dial tone. This happens twice. I keep doing homework. All at once, all 3 table lamps turn off. They won't turn back on. There is no overhead light in that room. Now the house is completely dark. Then, a huge noise comes from the far side of the house. It sounded like the furnace was dying, or they had a captive wild animal. I bounded up the stairs and turned on the hallway light. I sat in the hallway outside the kids' bedrooms until the parents came home. I was too scared to go into the kitchen and use the one phone to call someone. The parents explained everything when they returned. 1, they had a dual-line phone. There was a tiny switch on the side of the phone. If I had flipped it, I would have been able to answer the line that was ringing. 2, all the table lamps in the living room were on timers, so they would get turned off in the evening to save electricity. 3, the noise was their hot water radiator heating system. Apparently the pipes make that sound when the system turns itself on. I suggested they tell future babysitters about these things. When hiking with my family, down a trail with a creek running along it, heard a splash from behind us, and thought that was strange. This trail was empty, and the creek was too shallow for fish or anything. As we were heading into the parking lot at the start of the trail, a silver car pulled up. A woman, 40 or 50 years old, was watching us as we walked. We got to our car, and she said something. I turned and asked, "What?" She beckoned me to come closer. I took a few steps toward her. Then, she pulled a doll from her lap. It had extreme 80s makeup, a wig that looked like real hair, and a sign pinned to its front. I couldn't quite read what it said. My family walked over. We were polite, just complimenting her on the nice doll she had made. She mentioned wanting to give it to a little girl to enjoy. My daughter looked nervous. Not wanting to be rude, she hesitantly said, "Maybe I could take it?" The woman thrust the doll at my daughter. My wife caught it before she could touch it. Then, without another word, the woman drove off, yelling out the window about making another doll. The doll was soaking wet. Pinned to its chest was the sign, "Help! I am a doll." We left the park. We had planned to grill and swim, but we went home instead. We also tossed the doll in a dumpster.